It is official. This will be the final season for LA Kings captain Anze Kopitar. I was there at the opening of training camp. I was there at the Kopitar announcement. My reaction, thoughts, and a report on what I saw on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also one of the co-hosts of the show Locked On NHL Game Night. It's a nightly podcast and YouTube show that recaps the night in the NHL once the NHL season gets going. And I'm also a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Well, unfortunately, what I suspected was going to be the major announcement on Thursday by the LA Kings was exactly what I thought it was going to be. No, it was not to announce a new contract extension for Adrian Kempe. Yes, it was to announce that Kings captain Anze Kopitar will be playing in his final NHL season this year. Now, I touched on this briefly in our previous show. I've got mixed emotions about this. I am sad that this will be the last season of one of my favorite all-time LA Kings, a player that I believe is the greatest LA King of all time. I'm sad that Anze Kopitar will no longer be the face of our organization because he's been amazing in that role. But I am happy that Kopitar is going out on his own terms, it appears. I'm happy that he has spent his entire career as an LA King. And I'm actually happy he made this decision before the season started so we can get a little bit of a farewell tour. Not that I don't know that he's necessarily somebody that cares about that kind of thing. As a matter of fact, he probably doesn't, but I, as a Kings fan, will be excited to see him get acknowledged throughout the NHL as he plays his final games in this city and that city. And we know, as Kings fans, how great Anze Kopitar has been. I don't know that all NHL fans are really completely aware of how great of a player he has been. When you look at the greats of his era, especially if you're looking at complete players, two-way players, guys that do it on both ends of the ice, Sidney Crosby, Patrice Bergeron, Alexander Barkov, he's right there with those guys. And those are some of the best two-way players in the history of the NHL. Look at the statistics, look at the accolades, 2 Stanley Cups, 2 Selke trophies, 3 Lady Byng trophies, 5-time All-Star, the Kings' all-time franchise leader in games played and assists, and will soon be the all-time scoring leader in franchise history. There's no question he's a Hall of Famer. Maybe, I don't know about first ballot because that all depends on who's on the ballot, when he's eligible at the same time. But clearly he will not be waiting very long to be enshrined amongst the greatest hockey players of all time. He's also, the way he's gone about it, he's done it with class. I don't know that I use the word gentleman all that much, but Anze Kopitar, I believe he's a true gentleman. Now, we don't really know these players, and maybe it's hyperbole to say this, but Anze Kopitar, by all accounts, is a guy you would want as your next door neighbor. He's just a good dude, and he's represented our organization so well that it's sad. It's sad news that this is it, but it's also kind of a celebration because he has had one hell of a career. And I had been saying this, when we were wondering if this would be the final year, because obviously it's the last year of his contract. It's 20 seasons. I said, prepare yourselves because this might be it. Well, we now know that this will be the final season. He has said Even if the Kings were to go to the Stanley Cup final and lose in game 7 in overtime, he's not going to change his mind. He clearly has thought about this enough, and he feels like he's still playing well. He can still contribute. He's had a wonderful career. He's won the individual awards. He's won the team awards. And this is his chance to kind of go out on his own terms. And he's going to do that. And he deserves it. I think he's content with his decision. And we should all enjoy this one final season of Anze Kopitar. If you didn't see the press conference, it is available in its entirety on the LA Kings YouTube channel. I was there, and I heard Anze Kopitar explain why now was the time, because I will admit, I thought if he did this, he would probably do it later in the season. I didn't think he wanted this farewell tour. Not that he does, by the way. That's what I want for him. I don't think he cares about that at all. But he did give an explanation as to why it was now. And he admitted he was being a little selfish, that he didn't want to keep answering the questions. He didn't want this hanging over his head and the team's head. He didn't want this to be a possible distraction. And he said he didn't feel that he didn't want to put himself in a position to where he was going to make this announcement late in the year when maybe the Kings were in a playoff race. And he didn't want that to be a distraction. So for him, this was the best time to do it. And I don't have a problem with that. Sometimes you have to do what's best for you. Sometimes you do what's best for the team. He's done that his entire career. So I don't have an issue with him saying it now and getting it over with because he felt that was best for him. I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. I don't know why anybody would, frankly, but he did say that he did talk to former Kings captain and former teammate Dustin Brown, who made a different decision on when he decided to announce that it was going to be his final year. He did it at the very end of the year. And maybe for Brown, he didn't decide until then. So could be a completely different situation. It was a different decision for Anze Kopitar. Like I said, it makes sense for him. And I think while he may say it's selfish, I think it makes sense to get it out of the way, move on. And we all know. And now we can all definitely, there's no, gee, I wonder if this is his last year. We know it's his last year. And if there are Kings fans out there who maybe want to plan, I want to go see Anze Kopitar one more time before he calls it quits. Or maybe you're a Kings fan who's never seen him play before. And you're like, I got to get out to LA or wherever when he comes near me. If you're a Kings fan across the country, now you need to go and do that if you've never seen him play before, if you want to see him play one more time. So I'd like the decision. It's what's best for him. I think it makes sense for everybody all involved. And so no issues with me whatsoever about the timing of it. Now, he did mention in the interview that he is stepping away, not because he's lost his passion for the game or that he doesn't feel like he can't play anymore, but he feels like 20 seasons is enough. It's been a great run. His contract is up. And he said, as we heard in an interview recently, he feels like it's an important time to transition into being a full-time husband and dad, that his family has sacrificed enough for him. He's been away from them enough. He's got 2 small children, a son and a daughter who were in attendance. They're adorable, by the way. And he just wants to be a bigger part of their lives now in this moment in their lives. And I'm not a dad. I don't envision that ever being a possibility for me, but I totally can respect that. As you know, like I said, I don't have kids, but I get it. I get where he's coming from. Family should come first. And I think sometimes athletes and coaches will use their family as an excuse to step away from something. This is not that. I think Anze Kopitar is 100% sincere when he says he thinks it's time and he owes it to his family. And I think it's an amazing reason to give up something you truly love and something you've done your whole life. And of course, there is a certain age where you start to have to think about that kind of thing. And he doesn't want to be pushed out the door. He wants to go out, like I said, on his own terms, and he is. And I think that's a very fortunate thing for him. I think he's earned it, and I feel good for him because of that. Now, he was asked about his future, and he did reveal that after this season, he and his family are leaving LA, going back to his native Slovenia. That doesn't surprise me either. Both he and his wife are from there. His parents are still there. His extended family is there. Now, even though his kids were born here, and yes, he has a strong connection to LA, that news doesn't surprise me. He was asked about his future as far as a career in hockey. He said he probably wasn't going to get into coaching like his father. He said those people work too hard. But he was asked about being in the front office, maybe a team president or a GM one day. We've certainly seen that with former King greats. And he didn't say no. He said maybe at some point they'll, once the kids are grown up, if he has a desire to do that. He didn't rule out coming back to LA and the Kings at some point, but that's down the road. He's made his decision. And now for the Kings and Kopitar, especially for Kopitar, he's made the decision. He looked like he was at peace with it. He can now completely focus on this upcoming season. He said he felt very optimistic about the group they put together. And he wants this to be a special final season. His teammates are going to want to help end his career on a high note. So we would obviously love to see that. Certainly the ultimate of high notes would be another Stanley Cup title, but at least having a great regular season, having a strong playoff push, and going out by playing your best hockey. So hopefully that will happen. And it was interesting, and it was mentioned at the press conference, and I am wearing a Dodger hat right now, a black Dodger hat. I call this my LA hat. I do love the Dodger logo. I will admit I am not a Dodger fan, actually. I made a terrible choice when I was a child and decided to be a Pittsburgh Pirates fan. That has not worked out well for me. As a matter of fact, I don't really support them anymore, which is a story for another day. Nobody cares about. But I did go to Dodger games as a kid. Vin Scully was on the radio all the time over my summers. I grew up with that voice. I loved Vin Scully so much. So the Dodgers have a warm place in my heart. Anyway, the point is Clayton Kershaw, their Hall of Fame pitcher. I don't know if he announced it personally, but the Dodgers announced that Friday he was going to make his last home start in the regular season because he's calling it quits at the end of the year too. So you had the announcement of these two LA current sports icons, two Hall of Famers to be, two championship winning players, two players who played their entire careers in LA, both calling it quits at the same time. So pretty big story with those two guys kind of going out, so to speak, together. And I know they're friends. They were on the cover of Sports Illustrated together once upon a time when that used to be a big thing. And Kopitar was asked if he had talked to Clayton Kershaw, and he said no. He didn't know that Clayton Kershaw or that announcement was coming out on the same day that his announcement was coming out, but he was asked if it bothered him at all that maybe he was being overshadowed a little bit by the announcement. And in true Kopitar fashion, he smiled and said, no, not at all. And I think he's 100% telling the truth on that as well, because he's always kind of been a low-key guy, and I think he's fine if Clayton Kershaw gets a little bit of the headlines over Anze Kopitar. All right, up next, we're going to have a full report on the opening day of Kings training camp. We'll look at the good, who is playing with who, and more. That's next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer right now. New customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you want to bet. Player props, build a same-game parlay, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your favorite team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It is quick, it is easy, and is the best way to add a little more excitement to your Sunday or Monday or Thursday. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, obviously, the Anze Kopitar news was not the only news for the LA Kings on Thursday. They opened up training camp. So we want to get into some of the things that I saw out there, want to get into where some players were lined up, find out who was skating with who, how did they look. But I did want to start with Adrian Kempe. And we had speculated that maybe there was a chance the Kings were going to announce his contract extension. That did not happen. But Adrian Kempe, after skating in the morning, was asked, and I was in the locker room with the rest of the guys, asked about anything new with the contract negotiations. And he said, quote, "We're working on it. Not much more I can say than that. I haven't heard too much over the last couple of days. So we'll see probably in the upcoming days, weeks, we'll get something going. But as for now, Nice to be back with the group to start the season. End quote. He was asked how personally involved he is in the contract talks, and Kempe said, quote, just working with him, his agent. I told my agent and Kenny too, being Kenny Holland, we're not in a huge rush. Whenever it happens, it's going to happen. I don't want to sit and call every day. So we'll take our time, hopefully get it done soon. End quote. So obviously, this was before the Kopitar announcement. So we knew immediately when we went in the locker room and we talked to Kempe, when he says there's no contract, well, we're like, well, that's obviously not what the Kings are announcing. And oh, by the way, Anze Kopitar wasn't talking to the media afterwards. He wasn't even in the locker room. So you put 2 and 2 together, and we all knew it was almost certainly going to be the Kopitar announcement. So we're still waiting on Adrian Kempe. He's still saying all the right things. He doesn't seem worried. So some people like me will be worried about it for him, I guess. But so far, status quo as far as the talks to get a new deal for Adrian Kempe. As far as what I saw on the ice, and maybe an early indication of how things could go as far as the lineup the Kings will have early in the season. Nothing unexpected as far as the top 3 lines. We saw Anze Kopitar centering Adrian Kempe and Andrei Kuzmenko. We saw Quinton Byfield centering Kevin Fiala and Alex Laferriere. We saw Philip Deneau centering Warren Foegele and Trevor Moore. Defensively, we saw Drew Doughty with Mikey Anderson. But the big questions were, who would be skating together on the 4th line with Corey Perry out 6 to 8 weeks? Who would be skating together on the 2nd and 3rd pairings defensively? So we saw Alex Turcotte centering a line with Joel Armia and Jeff Malott. We also saw Turcotte on his own doing extra work in taking faceoffs, practicing taking faceoffs. So at least early on, I had speculated that maybe it was going to be Turcotte on the wing for Perry and Samuel Helenius at center. The early indication, and it's just one day, we'll see how things go. Obviously, things can change, but I do think it's somewhat significant that at least to start, it was Turcotte centering Armia and Jeff Malott. And Malott is a guy we saw come in and fill in when Tanner Jeannot went out. Clearly, the Kings coaching staff liked what he did in that small sample size. They liked his physical ability. So looks like the way the season ended could be the way the season starts for that 4th line with Jeff Malott out there. At least that's the early indication. For Samuel Helenius, he was playing center, but he was skating with some of the AHL level players and the prospects. So, like I said, maybe an early indication of what that 4th line might look like to start. We saw Joel Edmondson skating with Cody Ceci, and Brian Dumoulin was paired with Brant Clark defensively. Now, I have said I'm anticipating that Clark will be on the 2nd pairing with Dumoulin. I know Clark and Edmondson played together last year. I think Edmondson is a bit more of a 3rd pairing defender. Dumoulin, I think, is more of a 2nd pairing guy. And I've told you many times, I think Clark should be on that 2nd pairing. So we saw Edmondson skating with Ceci. And again, I think that's an early indication of how it could go as far as who's skating with who. But keep in mind, there were 3 groups of players because there's also, guys who are going to be in the AHL. Prospects are out there as well with a large group. So we don't know yet how these groups are going to go. And each of those defensive pairings, Mikey Anderson, Drew Doughty, Brian Dumoulin, Brant Clark, Joel Edmondson, Cody Ceci, they were each in different groups. So they weren't together. So we couldn't see, who came over the boards first after Doughty and Anderson. So I was encouraged by who was skating with who. So we'll see if that's an indication of Brian Dumoulin and Brant Clark on the 2nd pairing and Joel Edmondson and Cody Ceci on the 3rd pairing. As far as anyone that really looked good and stood out in training camp, I thought Quinton Byfield looked great. His line with Kevin Fiala and Alex Laferriere was the most dangerous looking line that we saw in the scrimmage. Hughes said afterwards, quote, about his season and his line that he's playing on this year. He said, quote, we've talked about being more consistent. That is something I have to be better with too. We're going to try and build on the past deadline success we had last season. He said he was asked if he felt like a veteran, and he kind of laughed and said, I'm still just 23, but I will say I feel more comfortable. I will say that, end quote. I thought Brant Clark looked pretty good on his first day of camp. I thought he stood out. looked more confident, looked more aggressive. Byfield was also asked about Clark in the locker room afterwards. He said, quote, talking about Clark, he looks really good. He's filled out a bit too. I'm happy for him. I want to see him succeed, and he can help our whole team. He's looked really good, and we're excited to see what he does this year, end quote. I've talked about the possibility of Liam Greentree being on the NHL roster, at least for the first 9 games or for 9 games early in the season with the injury to Corey Perry. I think he has to be extra special for that to happen. And I would say, in all honesty, Liam Greentree was okay at the Golden State Rookie Face-Off this past weekend. I thought he was okay from what I saw on the opening day of training camp. I think for him to get a shot at being on the Kings opening night roster, even for just the 9-game tryout, I think he has to be better than okay. I think he has to really show up, and he does have the opportunity to do that. There's 7 preseason games. Now, he's not going to play in all of them, I don't think, but when he does get an opportunity to play in some of those preseason games, probably the ones early on as well, because, that's the time when some of the camp guys and the prospects will get a chance to be on the ice. Saturday against the Ducks, that one in Ontario. Really going to keep a close eye on him to see how he does in that game. So far, like I said, he's been okay. He hasn't been bad, but I don't think he's been kind of extra special at this point, which I think he needs to be to try and make the Kings opening night roster. We will see. But keep in mind, it's one day of camp. You don't want to overreact to any of this, positively or negatively, but I'm just telling you what I saw, telling you what some of the players had to say after that opening day of training camp. Unfortunately, we did have a player get hurt on the first day of camp, and we have some other injury news to pass along as well. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com. You'll get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, I did want to add, I forgot to add this earlier, but we heard some reaction to some of the players, Byfield, Kempe, after the, opening workouts for them in training camp. All that happened before the Kopitar press conference. So the practices, training camp started at 9:30 a.m. It was over around 1:30, and then the Kopitar press conference was at 3:30. So we weren't able to get any reaction from Anze Kopitar's teammates on the news. That will come in the days to come. I thought it was interesting that none of the players were at the Kopitar press conference, and Anze was asked about how did he kind of break the news to his teammates, and he said he did most of it individually. He didn't call the group together and tell them. He kind of pulled people aside individually and let them know. So I thought that was interesting, if you were curious about that. All right, I did have there is some injury news, unfortunately. During the first scrimmage, Ontario Reign defenseman Angus Booth went down with an apparent knee injury, tried to get up and get off the ice on his own, couldn't do it, had to be helped off the ice by teammates. Have not heard an update on him as the recording of this show. It didn't look good, but hopefully he'll be okay or not be out of action for very long. Angus Booth, defenseman, 4th-round pick of the Kings in 2022, made his pro debut with the Reign last season, appeared in 50 games, 2 goals, 13 points. He did miss 22 games with another injury as well last year. Of the group of defensemen that are in Ontario, I think Booth is probably the one, as it stands right now, that has shown himself to likely be a future NHL player. If there was one guy you had to pull up off the AHL roster to play at the NHL now, you wouldn't want to do it, but I'm just saying if you had to do it, if there was a guy, it would probably be Angus Booth. So hopefully he'll be okay. Hopefully he can get back on the ice soon, continue that development. But he is thought as a future NHL defenseman. So hopefully it's just a minor setback and he'll be okay. Some interesting news from Kings veteran defenseman Drew Doughty. He revealed after his workout that he had a second procedure on his ankle after the end of last season. He took 8 weeks off. He says he now feels close to 100%. And he also added, quote, I want to get back to the player I was. I feel very confident I'll be that player again, end quote. So Drew Doughty had the ankle surgery last year when he suffered the fracture in preseason, ended up needing a second procedure at the end of the season. And apparently he claims he's close to 100%. And we'll see. Hopefully he is. And that will not be an issue going forward this season. Because that's the one issue that everybody should be concerned about, especially with the LA Kings. Not a lot of depth. They need to stay healthy for most of the season. And Drew Doughty is still a very important part of things. On a more positive injury note, I'm not saying the Doughty news wasn't positive, but Ontario Reign goalie Eric Portillo on the ice, full participant, played in the scrimmage. Actually, he didn't play in the scrimmage, but he was a part of all the drills, all a part of the workouts. Didn't appear to show any signs of any issues. He had back surgery late last year. So good that he is able to participate at the start of camp and should be good to go for the Ontario Reign to start their season along with veteran netminder Phoenix Copley. So an eventful day on the first day of training camp. Obviously the big news from Anze Kopitar, and excited to see the guys out on the ice working hard and getting ready for the start of the NHL season. It will be here before you know it. And heck, this weekend, it's the first preseason game. So excited to see training camp getting underway, and we'll be getting back to the business of talking about actual hockey games here in the very near future. Before we wrap it up, I did want to give a shout out to Raphael from Simi Valley. He was out there in El Segundo and stopped by and said hello to me. Raphael, it was great to meet you and really appreciate your support of the show. So I wanted to make that little announcement. For the rest of you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, of course, we wrap up the week with our feedback show. Would guess that there'll be some pretty significant reaction to the Anze Kopitar news. If you want to get an email in for that, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can always leave your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section. We'd love for you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're at Locked On LA Kings. And if you want some exclusive content, including interviews, special shows, group chats, and more, send me an email, lakingsextra@gmail.com. We'll give you the information on that. It's also a great way to support your host. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thanks for listening and watching Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings go.